So here's the story that crossed my desk. The lenders are, a hot button with the lenders these days is occupancy fraud. So here's the story. Somebody was asking for some input. I'm going to bridge what they posted. It's much longer, but in essence, they said, we are buying now because we found a home we love, and the real estate market there is getting crazy. However, we will not be able to move into this home until next fall. The person says they currently live in a large city and they're buying in a much lower cost of living area. Given that we won't be able to live in the house for several months or more, we came to terms with needing to get an investment loan, which we would later refinance to a primary residence loan after we actually move into the house. We were talking to two brokers. They're each offering 7% for investment property rates. But then we talked to a credit union, and the guy there is like, let's just do a primary residence loan. He went on to say, you rent out your other house, you're renting in the big city where you live now, so this is your primary residence. He said, technically, you're expected to occupy the house after closing. I believe it is 60 days, but we're not going to follow you around. Of course, the person went on to ask him some clarifying questions. He said, is anybody down the loan going to have such a laissez-faire attitude? Of course, he says, well, we sell some of our loans, but most of them we keep. Meaning we'll be the only ones you have to deal with, which didn't answer a question, actually. And of course, the person asking, is this legal? Is Fannie Mae going to do a occupancy fraud evaluation as well? Well, yeah, that's a hot button with them. Huge. So hello, my name is Timothy Sutherland, licensed loan officer. And I'm going to go through what you are going to sign at closing, depending on the occupancy of the home. That will help you to decide what you're buying. It's going to be a primary home, it's going to be a second or vacation home, or it's going to be an investment property. So here we go. First one we're going to cover is primary residence. And this will be in your closing documents. You are going to sign this. It's usually item number 6 on your security instrument, sometimes called the deed of trust or even the mortgage. And it says occupancy. The borrower must occupy, establish, and use the property as borrower's principal residence within 60 days after the execution of the security instrument, and must continue to occupy the property as borrower's principal residence for at least 1 year after the date of occupancy. So the key thing that you're going to see right there is they say must. And I point that out because some unscrupulous loan officers say, well, it's all about intent. No, it's actually you're agreeing to do this. Now, it does go on to say, unless lender otherwise agrees in writing, which consent will not be unreasonably withheld, or unless extenuating circumstances exist that are beyond the borrower's control. So if you have to move out early, you got to stretch that, get something in writing. Not a verbal from the loan officer. I would say not even an email from the loan officer. You want something signed by the underwriter or the chief credit officer where you're dealing with. In terms of extenuating circumstances that exist that are beyond borrower's control, that would be something like losing your job and you found another job halfway across the country and you got to move. Some people go, well, suppose I sell the house in 8 months. Well, that's fine. Once you sell the house, this thing's no longer in force. So that part's fine. You sell the house in 8 months, go buy another primary. This is for if you're keeping the home, how it works out in terms of how long you have to live in there, when you have to move into it, and that there are a couple of ways out of it. But if you're trying to get out of it within the period listed here, you do want to talk to your lender. Now, once the 1 year's elapsed after you moved in, do what you want. Now, if you're buying it as a second or vacation home, when I say second home, it means it's your true second home. It does not mean you owned a home and you sold it and this is your second home. No. Second home is if you live a bit of a distance away from where you work and you keep a little home near your office where you might sleep a few nights a week. That's your second home. Vacation home, well, it's where you go on vacations. And the two can be somewhat interchangeable. So for a second or vacation home, you can have an occupancy requirement too. This one states that the borrower must occupy and use the property as borrower's second home. Means you've got to live in it at least some portions of the year. The borrower will maintain exclusive control over the occupancy of the property, including short-term rentals. Yes, if you buy a vacation home, you can do short-term rentals. And will not subject the property to any time sharing or other shared ownership arrangement or to any rental pool or agreement that requires you, the borrower, to either rent the property or give a management firm or any other person or entity any control over the occupancy or the use of the property. So if you're giving somebody else control over the property and how it's used, yeah, it's not a second home or vacation home anymore. Buying a condotel, yeah, not going to be a second or vacation home. It will fall under that by any means. It says the borrower will keep the property available primarily as a residence for borrower's personal use and enjoyment for at least 1 year after the date of the security instrument. So this is for the first year after you sign it. Again, just like on a primary, unless lender otherwise agrees in writing, which consent will not be unreasonably withheld, or unless extenuating circumstances exist that are beyond the borrower's control. So the too long didn't read version, buying a vacation home, you got to occupy part of the year. And yes, you can do short-term rentals. You can't do long-term rentals, though, because you have to occupy. And the last one, that's investment property. Now, this one's pretty straight to the point. For investment property, borrower's occupancy, unless lender and borrower otherwise agree in writing. Don't know why. Section 6, concerning borrower's occupancy, the property is deleted, which means you're not occupying the property. It's your investment home. Simplest of the three. So if you're talking to a loan officer and they're trying to give you the wink, wink, nudge, nudge on some of these occupancies, ask to see what you're going to be signing at closing. And it will be one of these three that I showed you. If you were getting a conventional loan of any type or an FHA loan, VA loans may be a little different in terms of what you sign there, just because they have extra provisions for veterans. I'll also point out that FHA and VA loans are only for primary residence, so the other two items won't come up anyhow. If you want to confirm that they have your occupancy correct on your loan application, pull up the loan application you started with, go to Section 4, Section 4A, Loan and Property Information, and make sure occupancy is checked off appropriately. Is primary residence, second home, investment, or rarely used, but FHA secondary residence. Because if it's not correct, you're the one signing at closing, or you could run the issue of that great rate changing all of a sudden when they correct the occupancy later on in the process. So check it up front, make sure it's correct. Thank you for watching. I love helping people with their mortgages. Reach out to me with any questions. Have a great day.